Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's been a little bit. I had some projects going on and then I got the flu. I don't quite sound myself yet, but I think I can get through this without coughing into the microphone. Wanted to get back to the provider package and cover FutureProvider in this video. In the previous videos, we were working on one app and my idea was to kind of weave and bob the different providers through that one application, and that just got a little convoluted. So I'm gonna scrap that plan, start over today with a fresh, very simple app where we go out to an API, get a list of results, await that feature, and then present it in our UI. And we'll do that without Future Builder, which is kind of the point of having something like FutureProvider, where you don't have to clutter up your UI with those extra lines of code for Future Builder. So that's the objective for today. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I have typed Flutter create future_provider into a terminal to get myself a project. And before I fire that up, I'm going to go to the pubspec.yaml file and we're going to put the packages that we need into the project before we start. So I'm going to go to pub.dev in a browser. And of course we need the provider package. So I'll go to installing, I'll grab that version there, and we will copy it right into, right there, right after Cupertino icons. And the other package we're going to need is HTTP, because we're going to be going out and getting an API, hitting an API endpoint for data. And so we'll grab this version right here. We'll save that, we'll let VS Code import that information, and then I will get the emulator started. So we'll go to lib, we'll go to main.dart, and I'm going to start my emulator. Alright, so the information we're going to be grabbing is from JSON Placeholder, which is a great website. It's just a fake REST API that you can use for development. If you scroll down here to resources, I'm going to be grabbing users, and we're going to pretend that this is an employee database and that these are our employees, and we want to be able to get that information. So we're going to take the data that they send here through the users on JSON Placeholder, excuse me, and we're going to model that. So let's create a model to be able to receive that in our Flutter application. So we'll go to lib. I'm going to create a new folder called models, and in that models folder we will create a new file called employee.dart, and that is going to be our employee model. And so it'll be a class of employee, and you can see we've got several fields here. We've got some nested fields. We're going to keep it real simple and just grab a few just to give ourselves the gist of the data. I want the ID, so we'll grab an integer ID. We will do a string name field. We'll grab a string phone number, and we will grab a final string of email. All right, we've got our fields. We need a constructor, so we'll have a named constructor. So we'll do our curly braces. We'll do we can just take them as they come. We just have to do all the fields here. Order does not matter. End that with a semicolon. All right, and then we want a way to take our JSON information that we get here and turn that into this object, our Dart object. And so we're going to do a custom constructor for that, and we will do employee.from JSON. That's what we'll call it. And we will be passing it a map with string keys and dynamic data. We'll call that parse JSON. And then we just need to map each one of our fields from our API to our object. They are all named in the API the same way that they will be represented in our object. So for the ID, I'm just going to grab from my parse JSON the ID field. we'll do comma, name equals parse JSON, name, nope, comma, email equals parse JSON, email, and phone. And we will end that with a semicolon since that is our last field. And that is our model. We have named our properties. We have a constructor. We have a custom constructor that will allow us to pass in a map that we get from our API. All right, with that done, we then want a service that we can access to go out to the API and get that information. So let's add a new folder to the lib folder, and let's call that services. And in there, we will put a new file called employee_service.dart. All right, and that will be a class of employee service. And we want a method here to go get the users from our fake API, but they will be employees to us. And so we want fetch employees. We'll call it that. It will be async. And so we're going to want a response object. And so we're using HTTP. So let's bring that in. Let's come up here. And let's import our package http/http.dart. And let's import it as HTTP. Not hat, but HTTP. There we go. And so we will await http.get. And we want to pass it this right here. And that is our response. It's going to look just like this. So let's take that response object and let's make it a JSON response by convert.json. I need to also bring in convert. So let's do import up here. We're going to import Dart convert as convert. And actually, I misspoke back there. This is what we're going to get. This is what the JSON will eventually look like. Our response object has more than that. It has headers. So we want to use this step that we're doing here to actually get the JSON response. That's the reason for the difference between response and JSON response. And so we do JSON, or we do convert.json. That's not it. JSON decode. There we go. Response.body. And we're going to cast that to a list so we can iterate through it like that. All right, and now to convert that into a list of employees, we're going to do JSON response.map, and each one of those is going to give us an employee object, which we can then pass to our model. So let's bring that in. Pass to our from JSON. We'll pass in the employee. And just to review what that's doing here, so we're getting our response from our body. We're taking each one, we're casting it as a list, and that allows us to go through each one of these objects, which we don't yet know exactly what they are. Well, we do, but Dart doesn't. So we call that an employee. We then are able to pass that map to our custom constructor in our employee model, which will take the different fields in that data and map it to an object. And then we end up with a list of objects if we go cast it back to list. Otherwise, it's an enumerable. All right, and there we go. So we're not actually returning anything yet. So we want a future of list employee is what we want to return here, and then so we can just come in here and return that. All right, and believe it or not, we're ready to start using FutureProvider. That seemed pretty fast. So let's go to main, and let's clean up what we got here. So we got all these comments in here. Let's get rid of that. And then let's get rid of everything from class my homepage down. Just clear all this out. All right, and let's add our own homepage, and let's add it in our own folder. And so let's add a folder here called screens, and inside there we will create a new file called home.dart, and we'll just set that up as class home extends stateless widget. And let's give it a build method as well. And let's give it more than null, so let's just return a scaffold for now. That's good. All right, so then we come back here to main. We can replace this with home. And we'll need to import that page. There we go. All right. Save that. I will need to do a hot restart because we just changed too much in the application there. Actually, I'll need to stop the emulator and restart it. That was just too much change for it. Okay, so while we wait for that to boot up, I forgot I hadn't cleared out the whole main page yet. So let's go ahead and apply our provider. So let's wrap our material app with a FutureProvider. That's what we're here to do. So up here, we will wrap with widget, and that will be FutureProvider. And we need to import that, so let me let auto import do its thing. There we go. All right, and we will want to create context arrow function we will want to create our future, which we're going to get from our employee service. So before we do that, let's come up here. Let's replace this comment with an import for our service. So we'll do a final employee service. We'll just call it lowercase employee service, and that is going to be equal to a new instance of employee service. Bingo. So our provider is going to be employee service fetch employees. There. Now, if you look in the documentation here for the provider package, and we go to FutureProvider, where it talks about FutureProvider, you will see, in fact, I'm just gonna, that's not on that page. Let's go here. There we go. It will say right up here at the top that it is considered an error to pass a future that can emit errors without providing a catch error method. So if you don't like to live dangerously and you do want to follow those instructions, we can do that by adding the catch error here. We need to do a context. We need to create an error there. And you can do whatever you want here. So I would just do print error dot to string. Oop, not to hash code, to string. Like that, and that meets that condition. It will work just fine without it, but it doesn't handle an error if it does actually get one. And so what we've done is we've injected the fetch employee future into our widget tree at the time that this application is run. And so now we can access that from anywhere downstream in our app. And so we're going to do that on our home page. So let's go to the home page and let's start to build it there. And so let's create an app bar, and the app bar will just have a title. And we'll just create a text widget that says employees. All right, then for our body, what we'd like to do is we'd like to bring in our employees and display them as a list view on this screen. So let's bring them in, and all we have to do, since that future is in our widget tree above us, is provider dot, we've got to import provider, there we go, provider dot of context, and that's a generic. So if we come in after of and we tell the provider what we're looking for a list of employees. I'm going to close that twice because we're closing this and that, and we do need to import employee. Let's see, that doesn't seem to want to command, so I'm just going to manually import it. Models, employee. There we go. All right, and then that we can set that to our variable. We can create a variable called employees, which we know is a list of employees. Employees. And now that might be incomplete, so we would want to say if employees equals null, that we would want to handle that situation. So in that situation, let's return a centered circular progress indicator. So a center widget with a child that is a circular progress indicator. Like that. And if that's not null, then we actually want to display our list view. So let's do a list view builder. And so let's pass it our item count, which is going to be employees.length. And then our builder will be context index. And then open up some curly braces here. And inside there we want to return, for each instance, we want to return a list tile. And we will do a subtitle with, let's do text, employees, index, let's just do .email for the subtitle. Let's do the title, will be a text widget. Text widget of employees, index. We'll do the name there. And that should be enough there. Do the semicolon there. And there we go. These are already on the screen. We did not have to use a future builder. We were able to just bring in employees as if they are a standard variable. And we're off and running. And so that works great, having our FutureProvider up here at the very top level for single calls like this, where we got all the records up here at the start of the application, and we only need them once. It would work great, say for a weather app, and you were calling to the geolocator to figure out where the person was located to display the weather in their location, and you didn't care about following them, you just needed it once. This would work great. But a lot of times with futures, you are looking into detailed records. So if we were to click on each one of these and go into the individual detail record of the employee, we would not want this FutureProvider so high in our widget tree. And so let's take this a little further. Let's click on these and let's make a call back to our API for an individual employee's records. And now we know we can go /ID number and dive into the record, and it's exactly the same. But let's just pretend that there was a individual lookup for a record that contained far more detail that we wanted to get. We weren't interested in having that on the list view, but when they click on a detail record, we want to be able to get all that information. So let's play that scenario out where you click on this, you get further detail, you go back to the API for an individual record, get more information, and that obviously you have to await and display as a feature. So let's go back to our employee service and let's take this call here and let's copy it. And let's turn it into an individual record lookup that we'll call fetch employee. And we will also feed it the ID so we can look that up. And so we want to add that to here. So we'll do a / do ID. In fact, I don't need those brackets when I do just a single field like that. We don't need to map this to a list anymore. This would just be our response body, so not as list. And we don't need to do this mapping. We just need to return an employee and get rid of this to list. And we will pass it the JSON response. And then lastly, we want to return not a list of employees, but a future employee. There we go. So now we've created a service call that can get a single record just like this one over here. And because the data is exactly the same, we don't have to worry about modeling, even though we're pretending there is more information there in the API. All right, so with that done, let's go over our screens and let's create a new file and let's create an employee page. So we'll do employee.dart and we'll do class, and I'm gonna do employee page just to distinguish it from the model, and that will extend a stateless widget like so. And we'll have a build method. Let VS Code do its magic. All right, and we will return a scaffold. With not that. Scaffold with an app bar. There we go. That will have a title. That will be a text. And why don't we pass in, when we pass to the employee page, or when we go from our list here to our detail record and we click on it, let's pass the employee page a little information about this employee to get it started. And so we will pass the ID. So we'll do final integer ID. Let's pass the name so we can display that at the top. All right, and let's also, while we're up here, let's bring in our employee service because we're going to need to do that up here. So we'll create an employee service called employee service with the lowercase e. And then that will be an instance of our employee service. All right, now we need a constructor for the page, so employee page. And we'll do name constructor. We'll do this .id and this .name. And I'm also going to tag these as required. And the all-important semicolon. All right, now let's jet back to our home.dart and let's set up that linkage there. So after title, we will create an onTap method. And that will be navigator. of context.push, and we want a material page route. We'll take a builder, we'll put context in there. It's taken a while, but I finally have this memorized. And we will push that to employee page. All right, and I'm going to indent there, just to give myself a little bit more space, and then I need to pass the ID. Oh, I need to import employee page first. There we go. And pass it the ID, which would be employees index .id, and then the name would be employees index .name. There we go. That's long. Let me stretch that out for you in case you didn't get it. All right. So then when we tap on these, we should be brought to our employee page, which we are. Super. All right. Let's flip back to our employee page and let's replace our blank text app bar with name. There we go. Get that up there. All right. And then we'll have the body. All right, so we need to bring in our FutureProvider at some point. So let's do that here. We will do FutureProvider. And I'll go to the next line. We will create context, arrow function. And so the future that we want to create or set up for ourselves is employee service.fetch employee. And we want to pass the ID. And then we can give that a child. And that child, why don't we just do a center widget with a child. And we will make that child a text that says employee phone number. Let's just do employee phone. And we'll just do that for now. All right. Okay, so we had to do our FutureProvider here because it had to be inside of this widget because we needed to pass the ID into the employee page widget. And so this was kind of our first opportunity. But now we need to bring in that future. And we don't have a builder to do it. So we came up here in our home, and we've got our build here, and we were able to do our provider of inside the build. But in our employee.dart, sorry, that one here, we are already inside the widget tree, and we have no room to do that. And fortunately, there is a solution for that in the provider package where you can resolve this situation. Now you could do a builder widget here. You could wrap this with a builder. That does actually work. But a better solution is to use consumer, which is part of the provider package. So inside of center, around text, I'm going to wrap text with a widget. No, I'm not. Undo that. I'm going to come in here and child. Let's just ignore text for now. And in child, let's do consumer. And I'm going to hit space and enter to create ourselves a little bit of space. And so consumer allows you to have a builder. And that builder takes 3 arguments, which is context, the actual data that you want to work with, which we're going to call employee, and then a widget. And so the context in the widget, you can just type context widget, but the thing in the middle is the thing that you want to use, and then you want curly braces, and then you can put the text widget inside of your builder, like so, and it can use this employee. Now this consumer is generic, so after consumer we want to tell it this is an employee that we're going to get from our future, and we apparently want to import that as well. There we go. And so we also need to return from inside there. But let's come in here, let's get rid of our question mark, and let's, instead of the question mark, say we want employee dot phone. And let's get out of here because we need to come in clean. And let's also make sure that we're getting a value just like we did in home. So let's if we return here, let's say if our employee is still null. In fact, let's say if our employee is not equal to null, then we'll return our text, and then we can come down here and do our circular progress indicator. And we get a test up. Actually, let me catch that first. I didn't mean employee service, I meant employee, and lowercase employee. There we go. Save that. Let's give that a test. And it thinks for a bit, and then we get the phone number. And we come over here, we get a different phone number, I think, 442. Let's come down here. And it's making the call. It's thinking, and there we go. Okay, so that's a wrap on that one. So we did the FutureProvider at the top level for an original call that we only ever intended once, and then for a future that we were going to be recreating and rebuilding repeatedly, we put it further down in our widget tree, and we pushed it so far down that we left ourselves no room to use provider of on our import, and we use the consumer widget, part of the provider package, instead to give ourselves a builder and give ourselves some space in order to be able to work with that data still, and it worked great. And so that is FutureProvider, so hopefully that was helpful to you. As always, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.